Okay, yeah, we're ready.
Yeah, session is now live. Thank you, Pritesh.
Hello and welcome to the second panel session in today's Sedex South Asian Conference. I'm Pritesh Chauhan, the Head of Community at Sedex. If you're just joining us and have missed the first couple of sessions, you'll be able to watch these back tomorrow, 24 hours after the live session on the same URL. So please do come back and re-watch those sessions. Companies today are continuously faced with the challenge of attracting new business customers and staying competitive. As customers become more aware of the impact of their personal choice on the environment, the demand for environmentally friendly products are increasing. The main reason that the business case for sustainability fails is due to the lack of sufficient articulation around the benefits. It is often difficult for organizations to choose sustainability over profitability with limited resources, even more so if the benefits are not outlined clearly. So our panelists will share how their organizations are successfully putting together a sustainability business case that can impact the bottom line. To take us through this discussion will be our moderator, Mr. Ganga Sharma, the Vice President of Supply Chain Audits and Customized Services at TUV Rhineland. Hello, Mr. Sharma.
Thank you, Pritesh. Good afternoon, all of you. As Pritesh mentioned, in this session, we are going to discuss about the business case for sustainability. And what does it mean? Business case means it is something for businesses to look after or to follow. In this panelist, we have esteemed panelist, Dr. Vidya Tikku. She is a Senior Vice President of Sustainability at Aditya Birla Group. Vidya is a sustainability professional working in this area for over 32 years. She has very diverse experience as a functional leader in consulting and corporate jobs in developing sustainability frameworks and management system around it. What are the various requirements of international standards for all aspects under sustainability? She's currently serving as a Senior Vice President, Sustainability Portfolio at Aditya Birla Group for the last 7.5 years. Vidya is instrumental in developing and maintaining the Aditya Birla Group Sustainable Business Framework for all its group companies. She's also spearheading the group towards human rights management and embedding sustainability within their supply chain and value chain. Stakeholder engagement focusing on ESG aspects is strengthening the sustainability governance within organizations. Our very next speaker is Mr. Sanjeev Ganesh. Mr. Ganesh is Executive Vice President Procurement of Diageo. Sanjeev heads procurement of Diageo India. As head of procurement, he leads a team of manage a spend of over £600 million in one of India's most complex consumer goods supply chain. He has been with Diageo for the past 10 years. He has worked for the past 2 decades across premium Indian and foreign multinationals in consumer product and goods and retail market, as well as in management consulting industry across supply chain and operational roles. Mr. Ganesh is an IIT Kharagpur and IIM Ahmedabad alumnus. Sanjeev aspired to create sustainable values in the consumer goods industry and is passionate about what makes people, organization, supply chain tick. Our another speaker is Mr. Kaniksh Negi. Mr. Negi is Sustainable Procurement Director, Schneider Electric. Kaniksh is a Sustainable Procurement Director at Schneider Electric. He has in total over 16 years of experience in streamlining sustainability in multinational corporations like Schneider Electric, consulting and civil society organizations as well. For the last 9 years, he has been leading sustainability in global supply chain with a special focus on human rights, climate change, and circularity. Kaniksh received multiple awards and recognition for his work on sustainable procurement, including 40 under 40 Super Achiever in supply chain sustainability in 2019 by Celerity, Alvarez and Marcel. His work on groundwater management also won the World Bank Development Marketplace Award 2007. So our panelists have very diverse experience within India with the global contest. And before I hand over to them, a few remarks from my side. You know, sustainability, you must have heard about these words quite often. And there are few related terms: sustainable development goals, sustainability, what is CSR, corporate social responsibility. So if we see, the driving force is already been explained by Pritesh. Globally, especially after pandemic, it has been realized that sustainability has to play a very vital role to drive innovations, to drive competitiveness, to drive profitability. A lot of focus is on transparency across the brands, across the supply chain, and circularity of the products. And in this context, sustainability, it's named differently. For example, if you go to the Western world, they call it ESG, environment, social, and governance. In Indian context, we call national voluntary guidelines by Ministry of Corporate Affairs. We have SEBI guidelines, business responsibility reporting, but the core is the same. It's based on the three pillars: governance, social, and environment. And many of you are already working on the Sedex Meta platform. That's cover a whole lot of requirement about the ESG framework within the audit scheme. Another thing, in very recent, there's a legislation change happening quite fast started with the European Unions. If you see Germany, 2 weeks before Parliament come out with the due diligence law. Likewise, in France, there is already a law exist. So it's not more of a voluntary initiative any longer for us to remain in business. It's more of a must to have, and have in a right spirit and intent. Based on our experience, we believe that CSR, corporate social responsibility, or social license to operate, we call, is a tool or an enabler to achieve the sustainable development goal, or in turn to achieve sustainability. If you split it, like in a Sanskrit, it's ability to sustain as an organization. So with these thoughts, I request our panelists to share with us, enlighten us about their experience, how within their own organizations they take sustainability as a focus area, and how it has been embedded, integrated into day-to-day workings, right up to the board level, where it's a part of the central discussion point in the boardroom. So with this note, I request first Dr. Vidya Tikku to share her thoughts about it.
Thank you, Ganga, for that. And thanks, Sedex, for having me here for this a day-long conference. So could I see my slides, please, Vishal? So today, when I'm going to speak about what our organization as a group has done towards making a business case for sustainability, I'm going to talk on mainly two aspects: what was the need towards that, and I will try and focus more on how we managed it in our supply chain as of today. So if we move ahead, when we said why was the need, so there was not only for the sustainability in supply chain management, also otherwise there were two pushes we had, external as well as internal. Can we see the next slide, please? So if we see what are the external push, which I guess almost all businesses are facing, that there are multiple legal requirements, both nationally and internationally, as a business that we need to comply with. There are multiple member organizations which as a business we end up becoming members of. Sometimes it's also because our peers are there, or we belong to a particular type of industry, and so the industry organizations. A few examples I have given here is the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and then basis different type of industries that we have in our group. There is Sustainable Apparel Coalition, which relates to our pulp and fiber, textile, as well as fashion business. Then there is the cement business where GCCA comes in picture, and I've just listed a few here. The global trends on reporting have been changing, and Ganga just touched upon it, especially when you look at India. There are the stock exchange demands or requirements, and as well as GRI has converted their indicators to standards. So there are certain requirements of various indicators to be reported on over there. So those trends have changed, which are the third external push. The fourth, I would say, is peers who are doing it, and also multiple benchmark reports, which shows you where you are on the benchmark that they have devised. So it could be MSCI, or sometimes it is ISS, which comes more close to India. It's the CRISIL benchmark reports, and which basically picks up information and data in the public domain and benchmarks you along with your peers. So that's another external push. And finally, yes, the customers who are also interested in understanding how we have put programs, processes in place, what is our performance on multiple aspects under sustainability. So this is what largely I would guess everybody else as a larger organizations also have to look at when they have to consider sustainability, or using or considering those aspects into different facets of running a business. The next slide, please. Here we'll look at what are the internal requirements, or what is the internal need to build or inculcate sustainability into various decision-making processes. So for a business, there are multiple risks. And so reputational risk, which comes quite high up on the agenda, is if we fail into any of the aspects of ES or also G, then it becomes a reputational risk, which has a repercussion on business, especially it could be either as a financial matter, or also it can turn into an operational risk, which is the next one, which can cause disruptions either within or also in the supply chain that can impact us if we do not consider the sustainability aspects into our processes. This will lead to the economic risk as well. When I have said about environmental risk, then it comes under the E, and the social risk I have just put there, which can link to operational and eventually the economic risk to a business. So by affecting this risk profile of a company, sustainability management, and more so within the supply chain management, it can affect the long-term competitiveness of any organization. So if we move ahead, how and why we have tried to look at this in our supply chain, where I will try and focus on going ahead. The next slide, please. The next one. So here, as an ABG, we have a sustainable business model and also a framework. To begin with, we also have a sustainable business vision given by our chairman. So to make it a reality, we developed a sustainable business model, and to implement the model, we have created a ABG Sustainable Business Framework, which comprises of multiple types of documents, policies, standards, two types of standards: management standards, technical standards, and a host of supporting guidance notes. And to implement this, along with many things, we have got e-learning modules or e-learning training modules for all our employees, and can be also shared or made available to the contractor workmen who are at our sites. So coming to the supply chain, in terms of this framework, what we have there is a supply chain and procurement policy that we have. And this is driven through three standards: supply chain management and sustainable procurement. These two are management standards. The management standard is more of, since it applies to multiple facets of sustainability, because it could link also to product development, it could link to project development, and that's why they apply to many aspects and they fall under management standard. And chain of custody is made as a technical standard that we have. And also this is supported with stakeholder engagement policy and a stakeholder engagement standard, since suppliers and contractors, value chain partners are an important stakeholder. So to define how you should engage, what should be your processes, what should be monitored, is all mentioned or looked at into the stakeholder engagement standard. Now, how have we implemented this is we have created working group for developing sustainable supply chain. And the reason to do it from the group level was we have taken representatives from all businesses, procurement function and sustainability function into this working group with the aim to develop a common supplier code of conduct, which is the bare minimum that should be used by the businesses, and they can add on aspects which are much more relevant to what they are doing, since the requirements of a fiber business would be different from a cement or from a metal sector. So that's what this working group is aiming to do, is standardizing the supplier evaluation criteria, the monitoring of suppliers, and also on capability building of suppliers. The benefit of doing this together in the form of a working group is there is cross learning between the businesses and also the different geographies of what works, what doesn't work. To also take into the best practices that somebody within the group is following, and also arriving at that common denominator where all the businesses would be following the similar code of conduct or evaluation criteria. I would not go much detail into the policy. These are the key aspects where we have spoken about building capability with within the supply chain, adhering to principles of traceability, and to allow that we are having internally a common platform on sustainability management and reporting on different aspects under our framework. But also now we are working towards looking at a common platform for supplier management, so that all of it can go onto the same platform in terms of their evaluation criteria, how are they placed in terms of their performance on various sustainability aspects, which can be internally used by all our businesses. And the last I want to talk about is on the engagement. So the bottom is something which is a broad level, and on the top comes a deeper engagement with a few supply chain or value chain partners. What we are trying to say is, when we look at doing this, so we could work in terms of first setting expectations to supplier code of conduct, conducting various awareness and getting a buy-in, then helping them to put those in place, the requirements. Monitoring, audits, site visits could be the next, which we could do for those few with whom we are already working. But sometimes capability building and also some working with partnership is required to be done. And this can be supported through training, working with sometimes the civil society organizations, working with peer partnership, doing government advocacy, and the benefit which can be given to some of these suppliers with whom we have done this capability building is possibly into purchasing practices or giving them incentives with repeat orders, all of it. And at the same time, building in the grievance redressal if there is anything within the whole process of engagement with the suppliers. Now, this is being streamlined as how to do as a process, trying to support it now along with an IT platform that we are trying to bring in, possibly the same one for all our businesses, which would then be helping us rather as a group towards building a good chain of sustainable suppliers for us. I think I would stop at this at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidyaji, for giving us a broader at a high corporate level, and then micro level details at a supplier level, like self-assessment and then partnership. Thank you very much. So maybe request now our next speaker, Dr. Sanjeev Ganesh.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Ganga, and first of all, thank you for this this amazing opportunity to be part of this discussion. I feel privileged to be part of this esteemed panel, which just represents such a diverse cross section of industry with Dr. Vidya, Mr. Kanishk, and Mr. Ganga yourself. I happened to catch the last panel discussion, and I found it to be very, very interesting. Also, Sedex, thank you for suggesting this topic. I think it is very germane for the time we live in. And time is the crucial bit we need to solve for, because when it comes to sustainability, we are effectively talking about the long-term impact of our actions, both negative and positive. And accordingly, our initiatives on sustainability today will bear out, or will hopefully bear out, into the far future. So the argument of this far future needs to be juxtaposed with the reality of today, and that's precisely where the business case comes in. And by the way, this aspect of a timing phase lag, this aspect of doing something today for a better tomorrow, it falls prey to what behavioral economics calls intertemporal substitution, which is shifting an action or an event to a more advantageous time. As humans, if we don't see the benefits of our actions today, we will simply postpone this for tomorrow. And so bringing forward the benefit and making it visible of our sustainability initiatives becomes very, very important. The question is, how do you do this, right? I think first and foremost, it requires a mind shift, right? Selling sustainability purely on our moral compass, right? On our empathy for our planet and humankind is possibly to the detriment of this overall cause. We need to think of sustainability not just as an end in itself, but as a means to an end, right? We need to understand sustainability not just from a risk perspective, which we talked about just a short while ago, but also from an opportunity perspective. For sustainability to be sustainable, right, and all pun intended, as a focus area for business, it needs to make business sense. And in order to do this, there are 3 clear areas we can leverage. But before that, the mind shift that I talk about, I think we need to start thinking and not or, right? And I will expound on this as we go along. We need to start thinking about sustainability and profitability can go hand in hand. We need to think sustainability and business growth can coexist and feed into each other. I think this is the most critical phase when we are defining what we want to solve for. And in my experience at Diageo, we found that putting this lens automatically orients us towards solutions where the objectives don't conflict, but actually work in conjunct. And with this in mind, allow me to talk about the 3 levers. The first is technology, right? This world is rapidly evolving, and technology offers us solutions which can potentially give both business advantage as well as sustainability. Let me give you an example. I represent Diageo, which is a global leader in the beverages sector, and we are the proud purveyors of fine spirits and world-beating brands, right? Our product offering naturally has a lot of packaging content, and this increases in complexity and specs as our brands premiumize. It stands to reason that beyond just making the content recyclable or increasing recycled content in this, the lower our absolute packaging content, the lesser is the environmental impact overall, right? A large component of our packaging is glass. Working with our suppliers and leveraging new age forming technology like NNPB, we've been able to sizably reduce the absolute content of glass in our bottles while maintaining the structural rigidity, while maintaining the overall aesthetics. How much? Over the last 3 to 4 years, working collaboratively with our suppliers and leveraging their capabilities, we've been able to reduce more than 40,000 metric tons of glass. From a sustainability lens, what does it mean? It means we are able to reduce the energy footprint by around 1.9 million kWh, reduce nearly 5,000 odd barrels of fuel consumption, and our particulate matter footprint by about 0.3 odd million pounds. Now, that's the sustainability story. What's the business side of it? By ensuring we design bottle weights to suit the overall requirement of our suppliers, this weight saving also saw a reduction in the cost of our glass bottles. right? And so led to cost savings overall. And what's the key? The key is sharing this value with our suppliers so that they remain incentivized to push the envelope even further, setting up a virtuous cycle, if you will, right? I mean, I use this example from glass, but we can think equally of examples from other materials and components. We simply leverage technology to give us an and solution, solving for a reduced footprint and hence the sustainability agenda, and also helping improve our costs and accordingly our profitability. The second lever that I want to talk about is just leveraging the ecosystem, right? Today, businesses and services exist which were unimaginable some years ago. A classic example is from the world of EVs, right? Where the key challenge remains range. Now, apart from new battery design, which looks to address this range anxiety, EV manufacturers today can actually look at this whole evolving ecosystem of battery swapping stations, independent fast charge providers, etc., rather than solve for the range problems by themselves, right? Closer home, let me share another example from Diageo. We as a company have been pushing for improving our renewable energy footprint for some time now. Our traditional route of thinking had been to invest by ourselves into renewables, set up our own windmills, our own solar farms, etc. This doesn't really fly too well when you consider the investments and the paybacks, especially when you want to be an asset-light company, but importantly, when you want to focus on the consumer and use your energies to think of the most interesting offerings to be able to make to the consumer, right? So very recently, we solved for this problem, I feel, quite elegantly by leveraging just the wider ecosystem. We got into a solar PPA with a service provider. We will fully own and operate these solar farm facilities across our sites, cumulatively generating about 1.5 MPW, and against our 15-year commitments, right? So the commercial advantage for us is the discounted price, versus grid tariff, apart from zero capex on our side. And in terms of sustainability, this will help more than double our solar PV capacity and improve our in-house renewable energy consumption by up to 60%. Again, this is an and solution and not an or solution. And this is not rocket science at all. This is widely available, not just for corporates, but also at an individual level, right? The third lever that I want to talk about is the consumer. And I think this is the most important one. The consumer is ultimately the person who calls the shots, helps pay our bills, is actually the reason for our existence, right? And this consumer is evolving as we speak. For Diageo, this is even more so, as the profile of our consumer shifts increasingly to feature, millennials and Gen Zs. The consumer of today is increasingly aware of sustainability. In fact, across both awareness and engagement, a recent study showed that 2/3 of consumers are at a tipping point when it comes to not just attitude, but action, right? Increasingly, the business case for sustainability is actually being written by the consumer. Let me share one more example, and this is a very recent one, and it's about one of our key brands called Signature, right? Signature is one of the largest Indian liquor brands for Diageo India, in the upper prestige portfolio, clocking over about 2.2 million cases a year, right? So when the renovation for Signature started, with the objective of making this brand more contemporary with modern codes that resonates well with new age consumers and drive rapid share gain, on the basis of deep consumer study, we took a call to relaunch this firmly around sustainability as a key positioning plank. The new Signature will actually be the flag bearer for sustainability agenda amongst Diageo brands, and has actually very first, right? It's the first. The new mono carton is made up of completely FSC certified board sourced from vendors with sustainable forest practices. It is the first brand to actually first liquor brand to carry this certification on the pack, right? And it's the consumer pull justifies the commercial and sourcing implications of this certification, and in fact impels our suppliers to push for even more, right? An example of the virtuous cycle that I talked about. The new Signature pack also removes plastic closures for some SKUs and replaces them with recyclable metal, right? I mean, thus reducing our plastic footprint by about 500 tons per year and strengthening the brand's think green outlook, right? All these changes, supported and amplified by our marketing and channel promos, is helping this brand not just do the right thing from a sustainability perspective, but is answering the business case via a very solid double-digit growth trajectory since relaunch. Now, quite candidly, right? What we had not been doing historically, but have recently started dialing up and amplified internally in the examples that I spoke about, is to identify and voice out the benefits, right? Not just from what we can expect in some distant future, but here and now, in the form of hard savings, in the form of clear cost and investment avoidance, and in the form of a resounding consumer acceptance, which reflects in business growth, right? Diageo also very recently unveiled its 2030 targets. We call it Society 2030, Spirit of Progress, with what we call grain to glass sustainability as an absolute key agenda. Under the same, we've got targets on water, carbon, and circularity, like most other organizations. We want to replenish more water than we use in all our water stressed areas. We want to be net carbon zero by 2030. Powered by 100% renewable energy. So there's some distance to go for us, right? And also half the carbon in our supply chains. And in circularity, we want to achieve zero waste in our operations, make 100% of our packaging widely recyclable, and increase recycled content by up to 60%. Now, we want to make this happen by triangulating these objectives while meeting our business objectives. And all of this underlined by a consumer who will increasingly vote with their wallets for businesses which offer more sustainable solutions. So those were my opening thoughts. Mr. Ganga, back to you.
Thank you, Sanjeev ji. And I think it's a very new perspective. Normally, we think sustainability within four walls of our own existing operations, although Vidya ji mentioned the extension of it to supplier side, on supply side, and other partner on the downstream side, especially the consumer as an important part of the value chain. So thank you very much. And now we move to our next speaker, Dr. Kanik Negi, to charge it up with his thought, and especially the water, if we touch upon, you won certain prize around it, and water is an important challenge for our industry at the moment.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Ganga. Just a small edit, not a doctor yet. So just Kanishk.
Okay.
And Vishal, if we can have the slides. And thank you so much, Sedex, for inviting me to join the discussion today. It's a pleasure to be part of this esteemed panel, and hopefully I will be able to give an overview of how we at Schneider integrate sustainability within the global operations, spanning across 250 factories and distribution centers across the world, and quantify our actions and impact. And I also invite you to look up to the Schneider Electric website, which captures and shows the various actions and results that we have achieved over the past years. Moving to the next slide, please. Looking at today where we are, so COVID-19 has changed the course of our lives in the past year, and it has made us realize how vulnerable we are and how important it is to become more resilient, take care of each other and our planet. And while we deal with the current situation, and hopefully we are going to overcome it soon, our eyes are still set on the crisis looming behind the pandemic, that is the climate change and the sustainability crisis. While we can be proud of having adapted swiftly to the consumer needs and our collective response to support those who are in need through variety of initiatives like Tomorrow Rising Funds and volunteering actions. I think, Vishal, you can stay at the previous slide only. We have not closed our eyes to the battle that lies ahead. We have doubled down on our digital transformation for more efficiency and resilience, and we have accelerated on our own commitments on sustainability, and some of which I am going to talk about in the next slides. Now the slide change, Vishal, thanks. So beyond COVID, our focus still remains same. Climate change is high on the agenda, not only for us, but across sectors. And expectations for sustainability are on the rise everywhere and with everyone. Shareholders and investors are more than ever involved on the ESG considerations, and they put pressure on the corporate actors to do much more than what they are doing today. And beyond the need of more resilience and efficiency, more and more customers are also approaching us to support their own sustainability transition, seeking our insights and expertise in energy and sustainability services. And it's not just a corporate thing. Social aspirations are on the rise, with individuals, employees, consumers who need far more, who are looking at a more sustainable future, a more assuring and a promising future, the one which is laid out, for example, in the UN Sustainable Development Goals framework. Next slide, please. If we look at Schneider, we have now embedded sustainability in almost every aspect of our business, starting from our company values, which mandate a specific behavior from employees and partners, extending into supply chain and suppliers. So being from global procurement, I'm responsible for that segment, to our own products and business solutions that we deliver to the customers for improving their energy and resource efficiency. So our products are helping our customers become much more efficient and sustainable. And when it comes to our own operational performance, to make our own cells accountable for our own company performance. And to do that, we formalize our commitment through the program called as Schneider Sustainability Impact, which sets the target that needs to be achieved by the company. And this commitment is not just words. Sustainability is a key component for driving performance in Schneider, and it is a strong pillar in the performance evaluation of the employees, including the financial incentive that is received by the employees. We call it as STEP, including the top leadership. So that means if we are unable to meet any of the sustainability targets that we have committed for, each one of us, including right up to the top leadership and the CEO and chairman, will get financially impacted at an individual level. So this is how we embed sustainability in the organizational culture and make sure that it stays on top of everybody's agenda, no matter whether we are going through a, let's say, down cycle in the business or in the up cycle. Moving to the next slide, please. And this robust approach that we have implemented over the past years has been acknowledged by various external rating and evaluation agencies. And more recently, Schneider Electric was nominated as the world's most sustainable corporation in 2021 on the sidelines of World Economic Forum at Davos. So next slide, please. So how do we operationalize sustainability in our strategy, or how do we galvanize our sustainability strategy? In order to go beyond, we are taking sustainability to the next level. So we have had annual plans, and we have had 3-year cycles focusing on sustainability targets. And in 2021, we announced a next set of 6 long-term commitments on the sustainability, ranging from climate action to resource efficiency to responsible behavior, and building a more equal and diverse world. And for the first time, establishing sustainability goals at the country and zone levels, and not only at the global levels, so that we are making a much more meaningful contribution at the ground level or at the grassroots level. And what is the duration of our long-term commitments? It's 5 years. And I will take a slightly deeper look into what those commitments are. But each of those commitments have to be achieved by the end of 2025. Moving to the next slide, please. And this is where we take a slight deeper look, and I'll invite more questions on this if you have. But for the next 5 years, these are the 5 global and 1 local commitment that we have taken at group level, for which we are all accountable. And it also includes impact on our individual performance appraisals, including the financial incentives that we receive. And each of the targets that are included in the new Schneider Sustainability Impact Program 2021 to 2025 will be monitored, measured, and reported after the due audit by our statutory auditors on an annual basis, and reported internally to management on a quarterly basis. In the interest of time, I'll just pick 4 of the 12 targets that we have taken, which are focused primarily on the procurement side. So here we engage with our suppliers globally. So the first target is that in the next 5 years, we are going to engage with our top 1,000 global suppliers and work with them to jointly reduce the carbon emissions coming from their operations by 50%. And I'm very happy to share that we have participation and commitment of more than 970 suppliers already who have agreed and started engaging with us on this program. This program was launched earlier in the year in the month of April by our Chief Procurement Officer, along with the global leaders from supply chain and strategy domains of Schneider. The second target that we have for our procurement is increasing the content of green materials in our products for up to 50%. And here we are talking about primarily plastics and metals as the commodities or the material that we are going to focus on. Our operational teams are engaging with our suppliers in both these segments to co-create, innovate on how we are manufacturing the materials, what kind of processes we are having, what kind of stream flow we are having, and how to improve upon that. And we are also co-creating, in a way, a definition of what do we mean by green material, because we can't segregate or we can't limit the definition of green by just one parameter or by having a condition which will suit only one of the particular geographies, because that will have a detrimental effect globally for the procurement. So we are engaging with our strategic partners, with our close business partners on defining what do we mean by these, and then creating a roadmap of how we are going to achieve this in the next 5 years. Another target, and this is in the same domain as Sanjeev also alluded, we are looking at packaging as one of the key focal areas. And the target for the next 5 years is removal of all the single-use plastic from our packaging. And 100% of our primary and secondary packaging that we use, primarily the cardboards, they have the recycled content, minimum 70% in them. And we have made good progress, and our teams across the geographies, across the regions, have already identified the pathways with our suppliers, and they are working on making sure we transition to this new requirement. And also to highlight what Sanjeev also mentioned, phasing out a particular type of packaging is not just simply packaging decision. It's oftentimes a design decision. We have to revisit the entire packaging because it serves a particular need, it serves a particular segment. So if we remove the single-use plastic, or if we change the spec of the cardboard or any other component or element which is included, oftentimes it calls for requalification of all the part numbers. Oftentimes it calls redesigning the entire packaging. So there is a cross-functional working group wherein we have experts from packaging, from design, from qualification, from line of business, who are jointly working to make sure that we are able to achieve this in the next 5 years. And finally, coming and focusing on the S part of the ESG, we are going to make sure that 100% of our strategic suppliers are able to provide or are providing decent work to their employees. Now, how do we define decent work? We have alluded to the definition and the criteria identified by ILO. One of the key points is how do we quantify? So here again, we've picked up statistical indicators recommended by ILO to quantify the performance and measure the performance of our suppliers. So this is another of the program that we are in the process of launching with our strategic partners. And we hope that in the next 5 years, 100% of our suppliers will be ensuring and adhering to the requirements. So with that, I will conclude my session. Over to you, Ganga, and happy to take any questions that we may have on this.
Thank you, Kanesh. So you really make us excited. And one thing from all the panelists is the come up is the concept of working group, especially in a large organizations. That's a nice, I would say, concept to bring diverse people, one from design, one from logistic, one from supply chain, one from productions, and then we can find out what's the most optimal solution to a given problems. Very good. So thank you very much. And now it's a time for open question and answer session. I have my few, but let's wait some more questions from the audience. Okay, so in the interest of time, maybe my first questions on behalf of the audience at large to Vidyaji. Vidyaji, you are handling diverse sectors within Aditya Birla Group in India and internationally. So what are the tangible or so-called significant outcome from your organizational sustainability business case? Maybe if you can quote one or two example which can give a more excitement or motivation for the audience to implement similar concept in their respective organizations.
Thanks, Ganga. Here now, once we say about what is the tangible outcome that has come, I would like to quote something that few of our businesses have moved towards doing, which a few years ago was not thought of, but now it is being looked at. So if you look at our aluminum sector, though our unit or rather the sister concern company in US was looking at primarily using recycling aluminium and prepare aluminium sheets, which are of recycled aluminium. They have now gone up to 60% of recycled content in the sheets that they are doing. But the same is now being looked at and being implemented in the India-centric business of Hindalco that you must be aware of, where recycled aluminium portion is being looked at to be enhanced. Also, there is a lookout of looking if we can use aluminium into the carrying containers, which are primarily made of iron or steel. The benefit of that, or also in the body of buses, the benefit is aluminium can be recycled as many times as we wish to. And secondly, it's lightweighted and can be built up with properties which can be similar, sturdy enough, same as either steel or iron for that matter. So when it is lightweighted, it helps into reducing fuel consumption, or even if you put an electric battery, then the life of the battery or the mileage you get. So that business is looking at innovating these solutions. So one is on circularity and second is onto the innovation. Second one I'll quote quickly is on the pulp and fiber, the Birla Cellulose business, which has come up with internal innovation R&D that is done, a fiber called Leva Reviva. Earlier it was just Leva, which was reducing the consumption of water into the process, so that because that's the business which has the highest water consumption, being a fiber or manufacturing units. So here now into the Leva Reviva, we are using recycled material. So getting the old clothes and then trying to produce certain cotton or other fibers from there and reusing it into the new fiber that is being manufactured. So these are just two that I would like to speak about. Cement is an industry which anyways uses a lot of waste material into burning into clinker units. So that way they reduce the waste material which would go to landfills can be used into producing clinkers. So that's the third one that I can as of now quote here. More details of how much and quantums can be seen in their sustainability reports individual. I have not created that figure wise as of today. I don't have it with me. Can be done. Thank you, Ganga. I hope it answers your question.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Maybe Sanjeev, in your presentation, you mentioned how successfully you able to reduce around 40,000 metric ton of glass, and it have a diverse impact, right from the energy in producing those glass. It's an energy intensive process, and then transportation. So everything on a benefit side. But how do we incentivize? Could be financially, could be non-financially, or motivate your suppliers who are performing beyond expectations or fulfilling your expectations, how it is integrated with your business purchasing decisions, like integrated scorecard where sustainability performance have a certain score to decide the volume of the business, etc.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ganga. And like Mr. Kanish said, it's not just us. I mean, we see the supply chain overall. So whatever I'm going to talk about is not just us as a standalone entity, but the wider supply chain, which includes our suppliers, right? And let me see if I can, on the subject of incentives for sustainability performance, let me see if I can draw upon Maslow's hierarchy to answer this. So at a very basic level, at the level of roti kapda makan, right, for mere existence, sustainability is increasingly becoming key, not just for us, but for the whole supply chain, right? It is not just a good to do, but it's actually a prerequisite for us to do business, right? And you called this out in your opening remarks, as did Dr. Vidya on the external pulse. So rather than be surprised by future progressive legislation, it just behooves us to factor this in proactively today, right? And one of the key things that we do is to exemplify, amplify, and make the entire supply chain aware of this, right? Because we are, like I said, we are all interested in business. So if there is something which fundamentally affects our right to do business, we will proactively work on that, right? But beyond this aspect, which one would argue is a defensive incentive for a strong sustainability focus, I think the key incentive is what I mentioned earlier. It is the consumer, right? And for companies such as us, which directly face the consumer, the onus is on us to make our supply chain, the upstream supply chain, aware that it is this consumer which calls the shots, and also to make aware that there is this global shift in the awareness and engagement on sustainability. A very recent 2021 study by Kantar found that what we call eco-active households has grown, especially over the pandemic period, to 22%. Now, who are they? These are shoppers who are highly concerned about the environment and are making the most of the actions to reduce their waste, right? A further 40% is what's called eco-considerers, those who are worried about the environment but are not making too many actions as of now. So today, eco-activities are driving growth for brands that embrace sustainable strategies. And as a segment, this eco-active market will grow 5 times faster. So building a competitive advantage through your sustainability strategy represents a major opportunity for brands. And logically, it makes sense for me to amplify this upstream to my supply chain, right? And companies that get it right will reap the rewards, and those who fail to act risk turning away a growing number of shoppers. In fact, Kantar says that 2/3 of all shoppers have just stopped purchasing a product or a service if in case it has a negative impact on the environment, right? And brands like Patagonia, Whole Foods, these are embodiments of how a strong sustainability plan can mean a strong product positioning and performance. And I feel this incentive is a lot more sustainable. It's intertwined with business performance, right? And as long as we are able to make the entire supply chain aware of this, I think that's a very, very strong incentive. I hope I did some justice to your question.
Yes, thank you. And I think it's a very good insight for a long-term supplier collaborations to drive sustainability. Maybe coming back to Kanish, uh, Ganesh, in your presentation, you mentioned that out of those 11 global commitment up to 2025, one of the commitment was that 100% of our strategic suppliers provide decent work to their employees, and which is also one of the fundamental ILO, uh, you know, conditions or conventions. So we would like to know from the audience that what does it mean, like once you say strategic, so we believe it is certain classification of your suppliers which are more critical for your business continuity, and very importantly, how you are ensuring it.
Sure. So any organization, when they're dealing with suppliers, they have to classify, the supply chain or their suppliers into various segments. They could use the term, differently, but essentially it means the same. The terms could be preferred, strategic, something, but essentially it means they are the first go-to suppliers for whom, if we are going to, or any of the global operations, when they're reaching out to that supplier, they don't need to follow the entire set of protocols that has to be. So these are the set of suppliers who've qualified, who've assured a certain set of performance, both in their quality, in the way they operate, on a whole lot of parameters. So every organization will have a set of preferred suppliers, if to use a generic term. Now, in terms of when we talk about decent work, now decent work is a topic which is often quite subjectively interpreted. And I would say that this subjectivity, because to me, one issue may be important and for someone else, the other may not be. So we at Schneider wanted to avoid that subjectivity. We wanted to make it very objective. And this initiative on decent work is not the only initiative that we have, which focuses on the sustainability or the social element of our suppliers. We already have a program which focuses on de-risking our supply base. So we do risk screening globally, and there are on-site audits, evaluations which happen. So that's one level of screening which is done globally for all the suppliers. There is a second level, because de-risking oftentimes take care of the basic minimum or the bare minimum which happens. But we do not want our suppliers to stick to the bare minimum. We want them to adopt leading practices. So we have another initiative wherein we encourage our partners to adopt the ISO 26000 requirements and include more and more sustainability or social best practices into their own organization, so that they become more mature in adopting it. And then so this second pillar focuses more on the leading practices, if I can use that term. And then we have this third pillar which talks about a decent work, and this is really the aspirational practices, wherein we are looking at the industry leading practices to be implemented with our suppliers. Some of these practices are at par of what Schneider implements in its own operations globally, and these practices make impact on the quality of life of the people who are working with our suppliers for us as our extended enterprise. So there is this broad segmentation of the bare minimum de-risking that we do, leading practices where we want to encourage our partners to move and improve the maturity, and then the aspirational level of practices wherein we cover the industry leading practices. And coming to how we implement, so essentially we reviewed the ILO definition, we took up the indicators prescribed by ILO, and there are 11 indicators. We picked up 10 because they were the ones who were relevant and linked. And we adapted our supplier requirements for each of these 10 indicators. So for every indicator, we defined what is expected from the supplier, what is the minimum performance that we accept, what's the not acceptable level of performance, and what is the other acceptable. So there has to be a transition. This is a journey nobody will be able to achieve, let's say, in 1 year or in a short span of time. So they will have to make this transition of probably they will say, no, we are at level 0, we haven't really onboarded with the actions, then to gradually say, okay, now we are at the basic level, then we move to the intermediate level, likewise. So for each of these 10 pillars that have been identified owing to the statistical and the objective work done by ILO, we've created requirements for each of the suppliers. We've created guidance on how these requirements can be obtained, and this is where the integration into our operational plans come into handy, because this is not just an additional, or let's say a good thing to do for our suppliers. This becomes a operational requirement for every buyer, for every purchaser. So any of our colleagues globally who are engaging with suppliers, they have to look at these the SSI, the 11 pillars, and then the 4 especially that are on procurement, and they are part of their operational strategy. They are part of the, so globally we have a procurement strategy, then we have at region level a regional procurement strategy, and then there are working plans. So it's kind of a cascading structure what we have, and in each of the levels there are accountability fixed, and these requirements on sustainability are part of these operational parameters. And if they are not met, then we get impacted, even as suppliers get impacted, because these are picked up during the quarterly business reviews. These are some of the requirements which are evaluated for continuing our engagement and association with the suppliers. So, I mean, these are some of the ways how we integrate, let's say, sustainability into our activities, and focusing more on the decent work. But same is the process for all the other pillars and the KPIs that we discussed.
Thank you, Kanish. In the interest of time, thank you very much, all of you, all panelists, all the audience. And we are confident on behalf of Sedex that these real world examples will support our audience to think differently, to accelerate their pre-existing sustainability initiative or develop new initiative to make them more successful. Hand over to you, Pratish.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma, and our speakers on this discussion on this very poignant topic. Your passionate presentations and views really show us how important sustainability is for business today, and even more so how this topic should be a core integrated strategy for businesses who want to conduct good business. So thank you so much. As a reminder, if you'd like to continue the discussion with anybody that you've seen today, please try and connect with them through the virtual lounge. There'll be a short break now, but we'll be back for the first of our 2 keynotes today. So please join that session by selecting the button in the agenda, and we will speak to you shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.